You've got these transnational communities, these online environments where people gather. Can you talk about this idea of belonging? You know, that seems to be a very important element, that people identify or even have an allegiance.
That sense of knowing people and having some kind of significant relationship that could translate to the physical world. I don't like to say real world because it's real online for a lot of people, that really translated over the years to people who weren't part of that original group. You find a place where people have real connection with each other. So I don't think we should be so quick to judge what's a real community and what's not. We need to look at the reality and the authenticity of the relationships. Eventually began getting together, and that was, I think, very important in the development of the sense of community among those people, but also online.
Global awareness that was not present in my generation. They really feel as if this is one world. There is a feeling of being connected that I did not have in my generation. And I think the third thing is that there is a sense of movement forward, the sense of going somewhere, of maybe we might call it progress, that I think was not present in previous generations. A new dimension of social interaction that was not present before, and that is the dimension that we're exploring now. That has not really been possible before. It's not been possible to have 100 friends dedicated to one really obscure little fascination. And now that's everyday occurrence. Because the web is so much bigger than just business, making money, and governing. It is really culture at large. It's a new form of culture, and the culture will range from playfulness and inefficiency and just playing around to the most serious accomplishments and achievements of humanity.
And basically, people discovered that asynchronous communication, that is, you log on and you see the comments that have been made on your comment over the last couple hours, and you make your comment, and this is kind of slow motion discussion, which for some reason brought out a, I don't know if honesty is the right term, but an intimacy. There was a openness that somehow, I mean, you always hear about the distance online allows insult and flames and all this kind of thing, and it does. It's a problem. But it also invites some kind of openness that turned out to be transformative. A world that was deeply connected to the real world.
So there's an engagement there that you don't get from watching TV. You can't talk back.
It's enabled people to find out what's happening and to circumvent the official truths.
Easy, quick access to so much information.
Empowering people, giving them more freedom. They wouldn't necessarily, and changing the existing power structure. The technology sort of circumvents existing power structures, which I think has been happening in Western Europe and the United States. The individual empowerment narrative where, yes, people were issuing tweets on Twitter.
Well, that's great. That means everybody has a chance to be seen. I think in the past, again, the traditional models would survive around scarcity, which I don't think necessarily is healthy for society, for ultimately a few people to have the control of the creation of all the content within the world and then have the control of all the distribution of the content in the world. Now with the internet, people have access to create and distribute on their own. People can share their own thoughts and feelings, experiences, talents. You have an infinite amount of resources available to you, or information available to you. And I think people, or this next generation, I guess they're much more knowledgeable about any topic that you can think of. That also sometimes people think of I guess the dangers of people trying to trick individuals with deceiving them with information that's not correct, that posting rumors, but again, I think this next generation is potentially more wary, or I guess conscious of that they are making their own decisions. They understand if they're reading a post or about to click on a link, where that's going to take them. So I think everyone's now is kind of conscious of how maybe people are trying to shape their thoughts or feelings. Different news organizations have different takes on just even one particular event, especially when you talk about the political system. So when you pick up a newspaper or turn on the television news program at the end of the day, they're trying to represent their point of view, which people would always have to kind of take with a grain of salt, I guess, if you will. But now people are, I guess, more conscious of that happening.
To be an amateur is a very rich contribution to culture. Amateurs do things for love. Professionals often do things for money. And a lot of good can come out of doing something for love. I think the web will really take on the contours of what culture has always been. There'll be hierarchies, there'll be elites, because we live in a democratic, vigorous society.
The press feel somehow their authority is under threat, and through things like Twitter and Facebook, individuals and celebrities and politicians are finding other mouthpieces, other ways of connecting than newspapers. It used to be that if you were a politician or a celebrity, you wanted to set the record straight, or you wanted to sell a book or something, you had to kowtow to the newspaper. Now you don't. You simply ignore them. I mean, if you're a big American star, you've got over 1 million followers. I mean, no newspaper's going to provide you with the kind of coverage you can provide yourself, and you can control it. And newspapers hate that. It speaks to their contempt for the stupidity and vanity of stars anyway, one we all share, about myself included naturally. But B, it just takes away their power. So that's the press's worry, and that's why they always try and sort of, there's a very uneasy relationship with it. On the one hand, they mock it. So Twitter, which is a good example, when that arrived, the press said, the most banal, ridiculous, fatuous people telling you what they had for breakfast. Oh, I did this, and look at this Twitter stream by this moronic celebrity. How boring is that? 2 weeks later, join our Twitter stream at daily whatever, and suddenly they're desperate to jump on it, absolutely. And politicians, there are dozens of politicians who think, oh damn, why did I speak out against Twitter just 2 months ago? I said it was banal and stupid, and now it means I can't have my own Twitter stream and everyone else has, and I'm losing out. How do I backpedal here? Because no fault of their own, they didn't quite see how it was going to develop.
When there are millions of internet users who can express themselves with a very low threshold, anyone can have the internet connection and then can publicize something, and then easy to be copied and pasted and circulated through these robust networks, very redundant network structure. It is extremely hard for the authority to completely, absolutely control any type of information. Now what we see is the internet actually driving the media agenda about covering events, particularly on the issue of social justice, the police brutality, corruption, or even natural disaster. The Chinese authority issued a censorship order for no Chinese media could cover this issue. They don't want the media to dig deeper than it becoming a systematic problem of the government. In the case of no official media can investigate the school collapse issue, many bloggers picked up that as their calling. And that action alone generated a national sort of attention on this issue, even defying all the censorship that taking down some of the blogs, closing down his writings. However, there is hundreds and thousands of other volunteers are keep on putting those information online, eventually driving this agenda back to the national media. And even the Chinese national newspaper has run a front page editorial sort of recognize this is the issue of human rights, that Chinese government must do something to it. So this is one good example of the online activism actually can sort of do something even when the official media cannot do it.
You are always framed in social media context in the world that you create.